Hi, I'm Astrologer Penny Dix. Welcome to the third in my series about the outer planets. And today's planetary topic is that very kind of tricky and sometimes challenging and austere planet, Saturn, boundaried Saturn. Saturn, our planet of restrictions. Saturn in Pisces, in the last sign of the zodiac through 2024, and how it's going to affect us all. So what I'm going to do is a little bit about what the energies of Saturn are, how they affect us, what we can expect this year with Saturn, and then I will go through each of your individual zodiac signs. And remember to listen to your rising sign first if you can, and then listen to your sun sign, because it gives you the area of your life where you will most feel the effects of Saturn. I think I'm speech dyslexic or something. I am dyslexic, actually. My mind runs ahead with the thoughts and then I can't quite catch up with them. It's a kind of ADHD kind of thing. But anyway, enough about me. Let's go back to Saturn, because this is all about Saturn. But with the rising sign and your sun sign, if you don't know what your rising sign is, go to my website, pennydix.com. We now have a find out my rising sign calculator on the website. So you click on that and put in your information and it will generate your rising sign. If for some reason it doesn't work, get in touch with me and I'll work it out for you. So there we go. That's easy. So let's have a think about Saturn this year and Saturn in Pisces, because first of all, I think we need to think about the sign of Pisces, because Pisces is a water sign and mutable. So this couldn't be more opposite to the energy of Saturn. Saturn is about timing, boundaries, and restriction. Pisces is, in one sense, all over the place. So what do we make of Saturn in Pisces? And what has happened before the last time Saturn was in Pisces? And that was about 33, 34 years ago. And I'm going to go through that very briefly with you and just let you know what happened 30 odd years ago, roughly in the news. And you can compare it to your own life. It may have been when you were born, of course. So you will now be experiencing what is known as your Saturn return. And while I'm on that subject, Saturn returns are pretty significant. We can have up to 3 in a lifetime, but that is rare, because the first Saturn return, and I'll explain what I mean, this is when Saturn returns to the place it was at when you were born. So say you have Saturn in Pisces. Then at the moment, Saturn is returning to the part of your chart where Saturn was when you were born. And supposing you have the sun or the moon in Pisces, then not only are you experiencing a Saturn return, but you're also experiencing Saturn conjunct your moon and sun at some point over this 3-year period. And this can be quite simply life changing. And it doesn't have to be dramatic. But what it can be is totally enlightening. So we get our first Saturn return when we're around the age of 28, 29. We get our second Saturn return when we're about 58, 59. And then if we're still around, our third Saturn return is around 88, 89. So Saturn can also bring about departure points. Departure points from all kind of things. It could be from life, but that doesn't necessarily mean through death, although the experience of that can come around Saturn transits. But it can mean a retreat from life, a retreat from what one was doing before, a kind of way of reflecting on where one's going and what one wants from one's life. What's my direction? What do I need in my life? And that energy is the same, in a sense, for Saturn conjunct the moon or Saturn conjunct the sun, or Saturn conjunct the ascendant, the descendant, or the midheaven. But I'll come to all these points and let you know what they mean. Let's just first look again at the energy of Pisces, then at the energy of Saturn, because that can help us understand the nature of how a restrictive, boundaried planet like Saturn can operate in a sign that is the depths of the ocean, oceans of emotions, of despair, of longing, of yearning. Saturn can set boundaries into these areas of our life that are maybe a little bit out of our control. So that's why it's important to know what your rising sign is, because it'll tell you the area of your life that you can expect this energy to affect you. And when I go through your individual signs, you'll see what I mean. So Pisces, as I say, is a very emotional, psychic, intuitive, imaginative sign. Saturn is austere. It rules Capricorn. Saturn is about restriction and boundaries. You think of it visually. It has rings. So the rings of Saturn give us this sense of the fact that it's about containment, structure, boundaries. I mean, let me just tell you a little bit about the astrology, or the astronomy, should I say, because that is quite interesting, because Saturn is the sixth planet from the sun, and it's the second largest in the solar system. The rings are actually made mostly of ice particles and dust, and the planet has such a low density that it could float in water. So there's something also quite nebulous about Saturn. So if we think of Saturn, this planet that sometimes comes across as quite a heavy and stern and austere taskmaster, it floats in water. What is Pisces? Pisces is water. It's interesting, isn't it? So it has a prominent moon called Titan, which is larger than Mercury, which is our planet of communication. And Titan has a thick atmosphere and has lakes and rivers of liquid hydrocarbons. So that's kind of the astronomical history of Saturn. And it's the planet that we can still see through a telescope from planet Earth quite easily. Anything beyond that has only been possible in later years, where our telescopes have got so much stronger and can see so much further. So Saturn really does represent this dweller on the threshold, this planet that is all about going further out into the unknown, exploring the unknown. And I think to a certain extent, Saturn in Pisces is asking us to take some risks, to actually, with whatever it is that we're having going on in our lives, and whichever part of our life is aspected by Saturn, that we work with the energy of structure and timing. You know, Saturn is about boundaries. So to put boundaries in water, which is Pisces, is quite tough. So Saturn has to float. So if Saturn floats its way through the sign of Pisces, so therefore if we work with Saturn's energy in a way that we don't resist it in whichever part of the chart we find it, but kind of go with that energy as if we're in a submarine or in the cabin of a boat floating on top of the water. But it has a rudder that we can hold on to. We can steer the ship that can be represented by Saturn and its archetype. You know, Saturn is, if I go on to the mythology of Saturn, it's seen as the shadow or even as the devil. And, you know, there's a beautiful book written by the psychoanalytical psychotherapist and astrologer Liz Green called A New Look at an Old Devil. And it's all about Saturn. It's almost like a Bible for anyone learning astrology, because to learn and understand astrology, we really need to understand Saturn. And we need to understand the Saturn that we have in our own chart. Because if we don't understand Saturn or learn to work with Saturn's energies, it will present an external event to slow us down so that we have to look within. That is one of the kind of messages of Saturn. Now, Saturn rules Capricorn, which interestingly is a feminine sign. So the kind of archetype of Saturn is actually feminine. And yet Saturn is often referred to as the god Kronos, and the god that promises the golden age. That's why I often talk about all of these planets as if they have a gift to offer us. It's up to us how we take up that gift. I know I say it so many times, but we have to do the work. We have to trust that if Saturn is active in our natal chart, if it's transiting and making aspects to important points in our chart, then we have to pay heed to it. We have to slow down. We have to look at the area of our chart that it's reflecting. Let me give you an example. Saturn, for me, is currently in my 8th house, which is Pisces. And I have my moon in the sign of Pisces. So Saturn In fact, currently, even on today, the day I'm recording this video, which is the 4th of March, Saturn is conjunct my moon at 10 degrees. The minutes aren't quite exact yet. That's later this week. Saturn, the last time it was in this part of my chart was 30 odd years ago. And guess what? I got very bad back pain, so severe that at that time, with the way the medical system worked, they decided on emergency spinal surgery. And so I received emergency spinal surgery. Saturn rules the spine. Saturn rules the skeleton. Now, of course, what it did was slow me down, because it meant for actually a year, and that was actually while Saturn was in Pisces, hovering around my moon, I had to sit still, and I had to reflect, and I had to go within. Whether I learnt the lesson or not at that time, I'm not sure. However, coming up to this point in my life where I've got Saturn conjunct my moon again in Pisces in my 8th house. Now, the 8th house is a house that is or can be quite dark because it's ruled by Scorpio and Pluto. It's about beginnings and endings. Saturn in this part of the chart, and listen to this, if you're a Leo, Leo rising or Leo sun, then you have Saturn in your 8th house. And Saturn will be inviting you to take time out to slow down. And as I said before, if we don't do it willingly, if we don't, as I talk about it, do the inner work, it will find a way to slow us down. Now, this time round, I knew all of this. Of course I did. I've got back pain. I've had the MRIs. I know I have to have back surgery. Or did I need to have back surgery? So I've done everything within my power to circumnavigate that, Saturn in Pisces, in that submarine, and done my best to lose weight, to get stronger physically, to be more mobile, to really work with my mobility. But all the MRIs said, this is only going to be resolved by surgery. And I thought, well, my goodness, there you go. Whatever I did, I was not going to avoid this Saturn transit taking me out of action for a while, which of course is what is going to happen in just 3 weeks' time. Now, interestingly, what I've done is I've chosen a date when Saturn is aspected in a good way in my chart, so that the energy will be conducive to good healing, and my senses, looking at the astrology of my chart, I will, let's use this terminology, sail through this and actually come out okay the other end. So I tell you that as an example that there's something about Saturn. It's like we're caught in a corner, and whichever way we go, we can't avoid the difficult lesson we've got to learn. I hope that kind of makes sense, because it is a difficult lesson that one has to learn. Because for me, I'm having to learn to slow down. I'm having to learn to accept that I'm at a point in my life where slowing down is just part of the process. It doesn't mean slowing down to a complete halt. It just means slowing down and taking my time. As I tell you what, lovely Jerry says, slow and steady wins the race by Aesop. So I am gliding into this surgery with confidence and good feeling and optimism. And I think that's the best way to go into it. So what I'm saying is, with Saturn transits, and if you have a reading with me, and I'm taking bookings now from June, because that should be when I'll be able to be up and running and sitting back in this chair for longer than 20 minutes to do a session, that, we can look at the Saturn transit, Saturn in Pisces, as it traverses your chart, what it's teaching you, what the lesson is, even if it's not aspecting any particular point in your chart. You can still gain an awful lot from understanding the location of Saturn in your own chart. So Saturn wants us to grow and achieve our best potential, so that actually we stop fearing this old devil. I give that to Liz Green. And love him as the bringer of necessary challenges that enable us to grow into our full potential. So how cool is that? So I'm viewing what's happening to me, and I tell you this story because I hope it'll help you see how not to fear Saturn. And, I'm going into this full of optimism. And it is about discipline. So I've had to use the discipline. I'm having to take responsibility. It's about my structure. It's about my spine, my bones. So often with a Saturn transit, things can happen to us like joint problems, broken bones, hip problems, anything of that nature that slow us down. If we fight against Saturn, it'll corner us. It'll go, no, you don't. No, you don't. You will face this. Saturn is the shadow. But as I've said before, in one sense, the shadow is just one area of this wonderful whole yin-yang energy, masculine, feminine. It's like Saturn is almost masculine and feminine. Capricorn is a feminine sign. So Saturn is kind of traditionally seen as a feminine planet. But the Romans refer to Saturn as as a Roman god. The Greeks refer to Saturn as Kronos. If we do the work that Saturn sets before us, Saturn will reward us. And that's what's so exciting. Because what we're rewarded with, in some ways, is a kind of a sense of letting go, a sense of relief, a sense of that feeling of stopping to, not trying to make things happen. The allowing ourselves to go with that flow, to be Saturn floating in the waters of Pisces, moving through over the next, I think another year we've got to go with Saturn in Pisces. Let me at this point just tell you when Saturn first went into Pisces, because then you can think about what's been happening for you since Saturn went into Pisces. And I'm going to give you some of the relevant aspects that Saturn is making this year whilst it's in Pisces. And then I'll go through your individual zodiac signs. But also, I just want to say, what happened in history, that was the other thing I wanted to talk about. You know, the last time Saturn was in Pisces, guess what? Israel was fighting the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization. But they did sign a peace treaty. Might we see something like that before Saturn leaves Pisces? Also, in 1994, Nelson Mandela became president of South Africa, marking the end of apartheid. There was, however, a terrible genocide in Rwanda, and an estimated 800,000 people, primarily from the Tutsi ethnic group, were murdered. There was also an agreement in the Bosnia-Herzegovina war. And Dolly the sheep, I had to do that, sorry, was the first cloned mammal. And the other thing was there were a couple of terrorist bombs. One was at the Centennial Park, Olympic Park, during the summer of the Olympics in Atlanta. It was the Atlanta bombing. And also there was a truck bomb exploded in the underground parking garage of the World Trade Center in New York City, killing 6 people and injuring over 1,000. And that was many years before the World Trade Center actually, was no more. So they're the significant events. So if we think about the significant events that are happening now, it's just quite interesting that there are kind of overlaps. And some of you might be interested that the Saturn rules the root chakra. And it's one of the 7 main energy centers of the body. And of course, it is associated with stability, security, and grounding energy. And the color associated with this chakra is red. So this chakra is actually represented by 2 planets, Saturn and Mars. So Saturn first dipped into Pisces on the 8th of March 2023. So it might be quite helpful to think back to the 8th of March 2023 and what was happening for you, because it'll give you a clue. It set a point in time as to what you can expect while Saturn is in the Pisces part of your chart. June 2023, it went retrograde until the 4th of November 2023. And on June the 29th this year, Saturn goes retrograde at 19 degrees and 25. And Saturn doesn't go direct again, and it goes direct at 12 degrees and 41 minutes till November the 15th. But I'll be talking about these through the year, so you don't really need to worry too much. And just for anyone that does want to know, Saturn enters Aries, which is the first sign of the zodiac. Super exciting, with an amazing conjunction coming up with Neptune. Saturn enters Aries on the 26th of May 2025, so just over a year's time, and it will be conjunct Neptune in Aries around the 8th, 9th, 10th of June 2025. Mark that in your calendar, because remember, Neptune rules Pisces. So we've got this planet that floats in the waters of Pisces, and we've got Neptune in Aries, a fire sign, but the first sign of the zodiac. But more to come on that next year. I just want to read you a quote before I go on to your individual zodiac signs, which is by Alice Bailey, who is an esoteric astrologer. And it was a quote used by Liz Green in her book, Saturn, A New Look at an Old Devil. And what Alice says about Saturn is, when the disciple knows Saturn as the god who offers opportunity and does not only feel him to be a deity who brings disaster when he is on the path of discipleship, in truth and in deed, and not just theoretically. So we have to remember, this is not a planet of doom and gloom. Saturn promises a gift. I used to know years and years and years ago, and I've lost touch with her. It's funny how we lose touch with certain people. They're in our lives for a certain amount of time. But this lovely lady was a brilliant astrologer, and she was also learning under another very brilliant astrologer. And I can't remember the astrologer she was training under, but she was one of the first people to really teach me a lot about astrology. And this is back when I was in my late 20s, something like that. And she said, one usually gets 3 hits from all these big outer planets in a transit. With Saturn, and with all the planets, but with Saturn in particular, it does 1 hit. Here's the lesson. Here's what you need to know. When it goes back to the 2nd hit, say it's conjunct your sun. It's saying, well, are you doing it? Do I need to take some action to make you look at what I'm trying to get you to look at? Because if you don't at that point, it may present an external event that will make you stop in your tracks, slow down, and take note of what's going on in your life. Then the 3rd hit, the 3rd time it returns to that point before it finally goes forward motion to leave this particular sign, is when you are given the opportunity for the gift of Saturn, the gift of Cronus's golden age. Don't fear Saturn. Some astrologers talk about it as a malefic, dangerous, Satan-type planet. Yes, it has its shadow, but we all do. What we learn to do is integrate our shadow and recognize that what you see in me, I also see in you. When you see my shadow, it's also the shadow in you. And when you see what is hopefully good in me, that is also the good in you. So at this point, let's move on to your individual zodiac signs and tell you the area where you can expect most of the energy of Saturn to be happening. So let's start first with Aries. So Aries, this is your 12th house because you're the first sign of the zodiac. So of course, it's gone all the way around and it's in your 12th house. This, of course, is about the inner you. This is where you do feel restricted and imprisoned. But it's also an opportunity to really learn about your intuition and psychic abilities and to trust that energy, to see how you can use this energy in a constructive way. Remember, it's Saturn, about boundaries. Sometimes with Aries, with Saturn in the 12th house in Pisces, it can mean that for a little while you feel maybe sadness or grief or a sense of loss, and it may not even be about a particular thing or person, just a kind of sense of dis-ease, a sense of sadness about life in general. And what Saturn is asking you to do is lift your frequency. Float in the Pisces waters. Float like Saturn does. Float up above. Get some air. And, your fire can cause a little bit of kind of steam in the sign of Pisces. You need to cool down. You need to slow down. It really is asking you, Aries, to slow down and take your time. Take your time with anything that is to do with your inner world and who you give your time to. Who makes you feel whole? Who makes you feel held? Who makes you feel loved and looked after? Saturn can come into your life as a kind of paternal, paternal kind of figure who helps and guides you. And that may be something that is much needed for you during this time. So there we go, that's Aries. So now let's move on to Taurus. So Taurus, it's in your 11th house of hopes and wishes. I think for you, it's about learning to use the internet, for example, constructively and connecting with that wider community, getting yourself out there. Taurus, you can be a little bit lazy, a little bit, something else can do it, someone else can do it. Taurus, have you discovered AI yet? And, Chat GPT. But actually, Taurus, I don't think you are the kind of sign that would want to use that kind of energy too much, because I think you like to have some control over what you write, what goes out. If writing is involved in your work, in your business, excuse me, then you actually want to have some control over it. And you might find that you explore it whilst you're floating and basking in the waters of Pisces in your little submarine of Saturn. And then you think, nope, not for me. I want to do it myself. I like doing it the old way. Saturn in Pisces for you, Taurus. Taurus is, a little bit stick in the mud. You like standing at the back of the field in the same spot, under the same tree, munching on the same grass that keeps regrowing, because that's where you're comfortable. And that's where the sun comes through the leaves of the tree and warms your rump. So Saturn for you is helping you put some boundaries and structure on plans and ideas that you have wanted to launch over the last year or so. And within the next year, through 2024 and into 2025, I think you'll start to see that you get a chance to initiate them. And I think you'll find that from where Saturn goes direct again in November on the 15th, that it'll be all systems go for you in the parts of your life where you're creating this project that you may be working on. And I also feel that because that links in with Pluto's final move into Aquarius, November is going to be a momentous month for you, Taurus. It is for all the signs, I hasten to add, but in this instance, it is going to be big for you because you're going to find new ways to manage the electronics and the internet and usage of it and make it work for you. You will learn how to be master of AI and not allow it to be the master of you, Taurus. Now, let's move on to Gemini. Gemini, you're an air sign. You're all about communication. Saturn's a bit heavy for you. Saturn's a bit, even though it's in Pisces, so it's in your 10th house of career, your passion, your soul path, becoming more public. You know, Saturn is asking you to take a step back and slow down. Take a little bit of time out and think more constructively about how and what it is you want to initiate in your life. Because I think if you can work on what your passion really needs to be, what that comes under, what category it comes under, it feels it's about sections and boxes and putting boundaries on certain things. Because I think sometimes this Gemini energy of yours, especially in the 10th house, your career, you have such ideas. Your imagination just goes all over the place. Saturn is here to actually teach you some boundaries, to slow you down, and to really make it easy for you to put those boundaries in place by the time that Saturn moves on into Aries next year. So let's move on to Cancer. Cancer, it's your 9th house. This is higher education. It's also about truth, justice, spiritual enlightenment. How spiritually enlightened are you, Cancer? Or are you hiding in your shell? You know, there's some similarities between the Saturnian energy and the Cancer crab-like shell. Does Saturn have a soft interior? Well, yes, I think Saturn actually does. I think its ability to float and take one safely from one side of the shore to the other shows us what you are also able to do, Cancer. You've been through a tough time, Cancer. And Saturn, if you have any major points in Pisces, because remember it's a water sign like you, it will have been quite challenging. But the good thing about this is that I just feel, Cancer, you are going to know yourself in ways you never thought you would. It's like there is going to be this amazing internal shift that just unfolds organically. So that it's not exactly an aha moment. It's actually more of a, now I get it. Now I get what life, adulting, responsibility, letting go, allowing, being, getting out of one's own way and not controlling everything, not feeling we have to control everything, staying in the moment. Saturn is about timing. So Saturn is actually asking you, Cancer, to slow down and be aware of the timing of things, to have some faith that upstairs, the divine knows better than you. If you can do that, Cancer, you will sail through the rest of 2024 and into 2025 when Saturn will move into Aries. So now let's move on to Leo. Leo, well, how do we restrain the energy of the lion? Leo, you are just, you can't be tamed. And Saturn is asking you to slow down. And it's in your 8th house. The 8th house is where your joint financial responsibilities lie, where you have all your, investments and pensions and anything like of that nature, where you think about whether your pennies, excuse the pun, will be enough to last you till your dying day. Look, Leo, we never know when that's going to come. And, we just have to live in the moment. And who knows, when that day comes, maybe we just shift a timeline. And maybe that day comes every day on a different timeline. And then we shift a timeline. And then here we are again, moving swiftly on. And we think, something slightly different about my room today, or where I am, or my life. I'm just throwing it out there for you, Leo. I'm just trying to get you to think about transformation, because this is the house of transformation. It's also about hidden secrets and shadow work. So, Leo, Saturn here is saying to you, stop worrying. You are able to float through this time of your life where you may be getting involved in some overthinking and worrying about your security and stability in life. And this is because, Leo, you don't like bars and cages. And Saturn is a little bit like putting bars and cages around you. And you want to run free. Don't worry, that's going to come, but just take some time out. Allow this time of reflection to reflect on not how much you've got in the bank, Leo, but reflect on how much you value you, how much you value others, how much you value how fortunate you've already been in your life. If there have been times when you think, well, that hasn't happened at all, actually you'll find there have been times when things have worked out, because after all, you're here, here and now. So something must be okay for you to be here, awake, alive today. I always think that's a good kind of grounding way of look at it. I know people go through the most awful episodes in their lives and real traumas and difficulties and all of that side of life. But I also feel it's important not to dwell on it or to give it energy, and to always look to the transformative energies of the 8th house in this case for you, where we are Pisces, where we have your little submarine called Saturn that is taking you through these waters, navigating them, and every now and then the periscope pops up, has a little look around, and you can see that it's okay. It's okay to just have a little nap, slow down, take your foot off the accelerator. So take it easy. Leo, everything will be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. I can't remember, I think it's a T.S. Eliot quote. And it's about going around that circle. This is another T.S. Eliot. I can't remember the exact words. One of you in the chat will tell me. And it's arriving back at the beginning to know the place for the first time. That's something about the energy of what this is about. In fact, if anyone else is listening to Leo that doesn't need to listen to Leo, that's for everyone. Saturn is about going round that circle and coming back to the beginning and knowing that place for the first time. Let's move on to Virgo. So Virgo, it's in your 7th house of significant relationships. And this is also can be business partnerships. And it can also be, our very close friends, and also it can be sometimes hidden enemies. So there's also something about, with Saturn here, being vigilant, making sure that those that are around you are there for you and not perhaps what they think they can get from your kind nature. Because Virgo, you are very kind and caring, which is just part of your personality. And it's important that you don't allow yourself to be taken advantage of, because otherwise then Saturn in the 7th house is going to make you feel a little bit bitter, a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit like you're sinking in that submarine to the bottom of the ocean and feeling quite overwhelmed and emotional. So try and see, Virgo, how you can let go and allow yourself to make commitments to the people that you need to take the risks with. Because maybe there are some people in your life that you don't want to take the risk with, or you think, well, I've been let down so many times, what's the point? But if we don't try, Virgo, we don't know. And what are we here for except to find out, to explore life? And Saturn is giving the opportunity to you to put down firm roots, firm boundaries, firm roots, firm commitments in relationships. It may mean, whilst it's been here already, that significant relationships seem to have moved away from you, or ended, or just left your life. And, that may just be for a season or a reason, and it may not be a permanent thing. Just let it be what it is. Go with the flow, Virgo. And Saturn will get you through this time. And the gift of Saturn can sometimes be, if you are single, the gift of a partner who is stable, secure, and understands how you need that nurturing and caring as well yourself. All that love you give to others, you also need given to you, Virgo. Okay, so let's move on to Libra. Libra, this is your 6th house. This is your daily routine, pets, health, service to others. So Saturn going, let's deal with the difficult bit first. Saturn going through this part of the chart, Libra, can mean we have to pay special attention to our health. It can sometimes mean that we experience health issues, joint problems, muscular problems. We may even break a bone, God forbid, but that is one of the manifestations of Saturn in the 6th. But my feeling is it'll only happen if you're not paying any attention to what Saturn's asking you to do. Saturn may very well be asking you to just slow down, take some time out, and just have fun. Just sit back. Just take it easy. Just sit in the submarine of the ship Saturn, of the submarine Saturn, and float through this murky depth of Pisces seas and look out of the little porthole windows and just enjoy it. It's also about your daily routine, and Saturn may be helping you put a little bit more structure in your routine, which can help with some of the niggly health issues that may have come up already during the time that Saturn has been in this part of your chart. And also Saturn maybe also have been encouraging you to be a little bit more open and charitable to others. Libra, you are about harmony and balance and relationship, but sometimes you are perhaps too cardinal, too kind of like direct about the direction you're going in, so that you forget about people that may need a little bit of attention from you. Because you know what, Libra, people like you because you're Libra, because you are balanced and fair, and you're beautiful to talk to, as well as normally being beautiful to look at. And I'm not flattering you, I'm just saying it how it is, because Libra on the whole are, let's say, fair of face. So Libra, take care. And the other thing, the other manifestation of Saturn in this part of the chart is, you know, around pets. If you have a dog, cat, furry creature, reptile, whatever it is that you may choose to be a parent to, sometimes we can have problems with pets. We may lose a dear loved pet. That can be one of the manifestations of Saturn in the 6th. Hopefully not. But on a good note, by the time Saturn gets to your 7th house, wow, things are really going to shape up for you with relationships. That's mid next year, 2025. Let's move on to Scorpio. Scorpio, it's in your 5th house of fun, entertainment, love affairs, creativity, the arts, children. So are you having fun, Scorpio? Or has it all got a little bit dull? Has it all got a little bit murky in this Saturnian energy, wallowing down in the depths of the ocean? You know, you may actually have to steer this ship, Scorpio. You are a water sign. You are used to being in the depths because Pluto is your ruling planet. So Pluto takes you down to the depths of the ocean and emotions. And Saturn in Pisces in this part of your chart is asking you to just actually come to the surface a bit more, to be a little bit more mindful of relaxing, having a bit of fun, making some close friends, having a love affair if you're in the market for that, enjoying creativity of any description. You know, paint that picture, write that book, anything like that. Make that YouTube video. Do something that really kind of stimulates you. Find out what your passion is, Scorpio, and allow Saturn to help you put some kind of markers and guidance into that and help you build a social life and a kind of a way of living that is a lot more fun than you've had in the past, because it's been a little bit deep and serious over the last few years. And we can't have deep, dark, serious Scorpios. We need some bright, happy Scorpions running around. And we don't want you stinging anyone. So here I go, wittering away. Let's move on to Sagittarius. Sagittarius, it's in your 4th house of home and family. This is also our early home life. It can be about our parents, ancestry, and genealogy. Sagittarius, first of all, Saturn here may have seen you making changes within your home. Someone may have moved out, someone may have moved in, you may have moved house, or you may just be making changes within the place that you live. They are all the kinds of energies that can be around with Saturn in the 4th house. It can also show that there's been a kind of reflective part of you, thinking back over the past, thinking back to what it was like when you were young, and maybe feeling a little bit sad for what's gone, for what's not there anymore. You know, it's okay to look back, but we shouldn't take up residence and live there. Sagittarius, you are and should be a fun sign because your ruling planet is Jupiter, the planet of excitement and expansion and luck and opportunity. So flip the energy of Saturn in your 4th house. Make home life fun. Put down firm roots. If someone new has come into the household, make them feel welcome and like they belong. Make them feel they're part of the family. And also, quite simply, it would be a really good time because you would have the discipline to do your ancestry, to do the old DNA thing and check out your genealogy, where you come from. It's really fascinating. I've done it. On one side, I can trace it all, or my DNA traces all the way back to Genghis Khan. Well, I mean, of course it does. I want a t-shirt made saying, "Don't mess with me, Genghis Khan is my ancestor." But there we go. Let's move on. That's you, Sagittarius. Let's move on to Capricorn. Capricorn, this is your 3rd house. This is your local community. It's also about transport, communication, thought, writing, collating information. So Capricorn, this will be about getting things in order, getting all your kind of documents and papers in order. Maybe you've been inputting a lot of papers into technology so that you don't save it in paper form, but actually save it on a technological basis, turning everything into a file on a backup file with a backup file and a backup system and all of that, which I haven't done, but then I'm not Capricorn, so it's not in my 3rd house. But it's also your local community. So you may be spending more time looking around where you live and maybe making more use of your local community. Maybe you haven't been out there much in the past. We had the pandemic. So, especially if you've sort of moved to a new area, you may not have really had much chance to explore. And so this may be that you're exploring where you live. And it can also mean that you make more decisions about the way you communicate. I think, Capricorn, with Saturn in this part of your chart, it has slowed you down. It is, of course, your ruling planet. And I think it's helped you to give a lot of thought to the way you think, to the way you come across, to the way people experience you, because I think a lot of things have been happening to you, Capricorn, because, you've had Pluto going through your 1st house and it's moved into your 2nd house of Aquarius, and then it dips back into your sign to tidy up. So you've really, really been through the mill, so to speak. It's been hard, tough going for you, Capricorn. But, Saturn here, I think, has been very helpful. I think it's enabled you to reflect. And sometimes we don't need to go to an external therapist, for example, to get that kind of feedback. Sometimes we just can do it with ourselves, or with a group online, or with a local group, or anything like that, which kind of gives them some stability and structure to work through our problems, to listen to interesting self-development YouTube videos, which help us go through any difficult areas of our lives. You can Google, or rather put into the search engine of YouTube, virtually anything. How many seconds does a goldfish's mind operate for? Things like that, and it will come up. So you know, Capricorn, that was a funny Capricorn. That was me being funny. I see some of you tittered, but not many. But listen, Capricorn, this won't have been that bad for you. This will have helped you do a lot of inner reflection because, you know, Saturn is your ruling planet. Wherever Saturn is, you will grow. That area of your life that you find Saturn, you will grow. And that's what's happening for you. Now let's move on to Aquarius. Aquarius, it's in your second house. This is your material possessions. It's how you manage your financial situation. It's what you actually do for a living. It's how you accrue stability in your life. But it's also your own self-worth, how you value yourself. So let's ask you a question. How do you value yourself? Aquarius, you know, you've got a lot going on for you. With Pluto moving into your sign, it's really going to kind of wake you up and give you a good bit of a shake. So Saturn in your second house, you need to take advantage of Saturn, submarine Saturn going through Pisces in this second house, giving you an ability to see beneath the surface. To see beneath the surface of your own self-worth, to see beneath the surface of what you value, of what you do to make a living, of your financial situation in general, to see that you can put boundaries and stability and structure into your financial situation, so that you too can have the gift of the golden age of Kronos. We can all have this golden age of Kronos, this gift of Saturn. So think about, whilst Saturn continues for another year or so in this part of your chart, how can I work at feeling better about me? How can I look at myself in the mirror and actually acknowledge that I'm doing pretty well, and that even with Pluto in my sign, it will help me to grow, it will help me to transform, it will get me into a place that I perhaps could only ever have dreamed about in fantasy, of enlightenment and empowerment of the self. But you can do this, Aquarius. You are the sign of the decade, of the next 2 decades. And this is when you can take center stage, Aquarius, and really learn about your self-worth. Now, finally, we come to Pisces. Yes, my oceans of emotions, my Pisces fishes that swim in opposite directions, which is always very interesting because they just keep going round and round and round, and there we go. So this is in your first house, of course. It's in your sign. You've had it here now since the middle of last year, or towards, middle of last year. So how have you reflected, Pisces, on how it's been affecting you? Have you found that you've been able to float in a little bit of a protective bubble, float your way through this energy to build some stable structures into your life, into you and how you are seen in the world in general? Have you worked hard on your persona, your self-worth? Have you worked on how the world experiences you, how the world sees you? Have you given that any thought? Because what I feel Saturn has been asking you to do is very much, excuse me, think about that. Think about how you value you. Think about how you come across to others, because I think on the whole, we're going to, we, the collective we, are going to experience anyone who is a Pisces ascendant or Pisces sun with a slightly more structure and boundaries, as if they have learnt some tough lessons, but they're embracing them and saying, it's okay, I can handle this, just bring it on. What you have to be careful of, Pisces, is that you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Because what can happen, Pisces, is that you allow the Saturnian energy to squeeze you too tightly, to squeeze your boundaries to such an extent, to such a structure that no one can get in. And no one actually knows what you're talking about. So that you become, again, interestingly, kind of unapproachable. So think about that, Pisces, because you've got another year, if you like, to work on how can I actually make myself within this kind of structured way of organizing your psyche, your soul, your intuition, your imagination. How can I allow people close to me without all the floodgates opening and everything rushing in or rushing out? How can you do that? Work on that. If you can work on that, Pisces, over the next 12 to 13 months, then I think you will have or be in a position where you really do receive the gift of Kronos and the Golden Age, the gift of Saturn. Saturn's gift to you, Pisces, will be one of balance and harmony, structure, and a chance to begin again, a chance to start all over in many ways in different areas of your life. So how cool is that, eh? Not bad, eh, Pisces? So there we go. That is really what I need to say about Saturn in Pisces in 2024. So I didn't quite do it in the hour, but I got it to 1 hour and 12. So not bad, not bad. Not like my Uranus one, which did go on a bit long. But please check it out, even if you just go and check out your individual zodiac signs, because it is super interesting, especially if we're talking about transits to Uranus. Listen to the Uranus one. So just to let you know what is up and available already on the channel, we've got Pluto. So that's Pluto in Aquarius and in Capricorn through 2024. We have Uranus in Taurus in 2024. And now we've got Saturn in Pisces in 2024. Now, the next video in the Outer Planet series is Neptune in Pisces in 2024. And remember, Neptune rules Pisces. So this is going to be a very interesting energy, because we're nearly at the point where Neptune will leave Pisces. So I think the fact that we look at it now to reflect back over the last years, because I haven't counted it and I can't remember when it went into Pisces. Someone will tell me in the chat. I will look it up later, don't worry. I haven't done the prep for it yet. But, you know, Neptune in Pisces will have opened up a lot of our intuitive and psychic awarenesses. It will have helped us elevate up to these other frequencies where we connect with the frequencies or the people that are on the same frequencies as us, whether they are star beings or spirit guides or archangels or spirit in the spirit world, but it will have empowered us to connect with these energies. So that's the next one that will be out, and that will be out in April by the 18th. And also the one after that, the final of the outer planets, is Jupiter, which I'm going to publish in May, because in May, Jupiter will actually move into Gemini. So I thought it would be interesting to reflect on how Jupiter has affected us all while it's been in Pisces, and then also look at how Jupiter is going to affect us all as it moves into Gemini. So there we go. So thank you so much for joining me for this Outer Planet series. Remember to like, comment and subscribe. If you want to book a session with me, bookings are being taken from June, because for any of you that don't know, I'm going to be out of action for a couple of months due to my back surgery, but I will be back up and running, well, maybe walking slowly by June. And also, always remember, slow and steady wins the race. That was by Aesop. And it was the lovely Jerry of Team Penny that has always reminded me of that. And I always keep it in my mind. And that actually is a really good way to end this Saturn video, because that would be a perfect quote for the planet Saturn. Slow and steady wins the race. Thank you. Bye for now.